And we are live. Welcome back to On the King's Dime, take number 2 on the awards night show. Sorry about it. Had a couple of sound issues there to start off, fix them up. But we are back and we are here to talk the season in review. It's definitely coming through. I can turn that off. We're going to be talking all about the King's season, bit of a disappointing season. There is definitely a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about the outgoing coach as well. A little bit about how he's done. I'm repping the outfit, trying to go as Fordey as I could for the awards night. But we're going to be doing our 3-2-1 MVP as well as the tipping comp winner. And we're going to be announcing that as well. It's going to be an action-packed show, an action-packed night. So definitely stick around and let us know your comments below too. Like definitely get in and comment and let us know how you thought the Kings went this season. Ultimately, a bit of a disappointing season. I think there was some ups and downs and definitely something to, as a Kings fan, cheer for and be happy about. But at the same time, pretty disappointing in the way it finished and ultimately kind of what happened not making the finals, the playoffs rather. We're definitely going to talk all about the season. As always, we're live right now on Facebook with sound, definitely. And you can also listen to our podcasts on audio form on the Apple Podcast platform, the Google Podcast platform, as well as Spotify. They go out to Spotify as well. We're on the Anchor platform. So get in if you want to listen to our audio forms. We're definitely going to be back next season. We're going to be doing content over the off season as well because it's going to be a very, very jam-packed off season. There's going to be a lot going on. Andy's been patiently sitting there waiting for his chance to talk. So what are your thoughts going back to the start of the season? Just a little overview of how you felt this season.
We thought this season could have been bad. We kind of spoke about this could be bad, but it was a surprising season in many ways for the amount of injuries we had, especially early on in the year. Losing Xavier Cooks even before the season began was a massive blow. And so expectations weren't really high. We didn't really know a lot of DJ. Obviously, we knew him as a bit of a sharpshooter, so we didn't really know what was happening there. We didn't have Jarrell. That's the other thing as well. We didn't have Jarrell, so it was an interesting kind of vision of what the season could become. We didn't really know Fordey, and early on it was we were kind of thinking this could be bad, but it turned out it actually wasn't that bad. It was a pretty good season for everything that we kind of went through with all the COVID, breaks, playing this play-in tournament down in Melbourne for, absolutely no reason. When there was absolutely, no COVID in Sydney, where we could have gone to the stadiums and watched the basketball. So, it was a bit strange, but not a bad season when you look back at the beginning of the season and thought what was going to happen. Fifth is a good finishing, I think.
Yeah.
Disappointing, but good.
It's been a super tough ride, right? Like all season, how many times have you just wanted to go, well, this team's not very good. Like, don't get too upset with losing games because this team, is not great. We've got injuries, we're struggling. But the emotion that this team played with and, the mentality they played with, how much heart, facing adversity and conquering it in some cases, every time they did that, they just make you want to get on their backs and just be like, come on, come on, pull this out of the fire. Like if we make the finals, this would be great. So that's been an interesting way to watch this team this season. Last couple of years, there's definitely been like some really good bits where if you go back to last season, how good it was, some of the stats, some of the team's play, the way the team was constructed and grew throughout the season, it was all sort of based in skill and not necessarily this season's kind of like emotional heart and playing tough and going on the road for so many games and playing through all this adversity. So it's definitely a different way to watch this team. I feel like this season is kind of more disappointing and more like annoying, I'd say, is kind of the word, that we didn't make the finals. But I think knowing that, I didn't get as upset as, the Gazy season where we kind of just got bundled out. That was pretty annoying. Last year, the whole sort of fiasco of how that finished was a bit disappointing and annoying. But this year, it's kind of like, it took me about 3 seconds and I was like, yeah, well, what can you really do? The amount of injuries, the adversity. I'll eventually bring up some of the stats and stuff like that. But if you kind of look at our game sheet just how many injuries we had. It was kind of ridiculous. Glover, you kind of forget we had him at the start of the season. He was just missing the entire season. The amount of games that Cooks missed, the amount of like ropey guys we had to bring in and just be like, well, you're going to have to play. Sorry, mate. And like, I think we used all 3 of our DPs at one point, in which, you know, probably scattered across the league. You wouldn't see a reliance on the DPs that much. From these other teams. I mean, you look at Luke Travis now. He was last year as a development player for. I think he might as well be. It might again be this year for Perth. He's doing real well. But it's that type of player that you see a development player come up through the ranks and it's like, whoa, like this guy's good. Like, and he's making not like, well, sorry, Woodhill, you're gonna have to play 12 minutes against Adelaide 4 games into the season. Like, have fun. You know, Galloway, in you go, mate. Like, you know, we kind of rarely have seen that over the last few years. But again, going back to the emotional state that this team played with, and I'm choking on my own cords here, the emotional sort of frenzy that this team played with, I thought was super commendable. And then coming up against this brick wall now, like we're going to lose the coach. A lot of guys are coming off contract. There's going to be a huge upheaval in the offseason. I feel like we're possibly looking at another just like, don't get too obsessed about this team making finals for the next couple of years. I think there might be some more rebuilding stuff coming. But we're going to do some content about that. We're going to talk about that over the next, you know, few weeks, and possibly what are we looking at later in the year. This season starts up again, so there'll be plenty of off-season stuff, a lot of stuff to go through. What about anything else you wanted to sort of talk about, mainly about the season?
Not really. It's good that it's kind of we've been put out of our misery in many ways. It's good that we've it's come to an end.
Yep.
And you know, it is what it was. I think that, you know, if we had made the finals, I think hopes would have been, you know, it just would have been another week. You know, I don't think that we were really going into the season expecting championship. Last year we were expecting championship. You know, jae'sean Tate, where we were, you know, 8 rounds in, we were like, this team needs to win this year. But the refs have other ideas.
Was it necessary? The refs as in last year or the refs this year?
I think every year.
Yeah, true.
There was a lot of instances. It seemed to be that the season opened up to a better standard of reffing in the last 7 or 8 rounds. It was really that kind of mid-round, and we were just like, what is this guy? Like, these calls were terrible. And then the last 8 rounds was like, oh, the refs are fine. Like, the game played, you know, sometimes it didn't go your way, but it was all kind of, it was 50-50 most of the time. But the first 10 rounds was just, you could quite clearly see the refs had the agenda. And I think the Fordey speech, I think, was actually the turning point for the season for a lot of games that I watched, not just Sydney, but a lot of games where it's just like, well, yeah, this is how certain teams are reffed, and these are how certain players are reffed. And we didn't see more of that. We saw a lot of leveling out throughout the remainder of the season. So maybe if you could have one summary of this year, it was Adam Ford maybe put the refs in their place for the last 12 rounds.
I definitely felt like it was better though this season. Like, thinking back on it, maybe, like, you know, I'm getting older, my memory's a bit shorter, but I felt like you're right. Like, halfway through the season, there was, you know, it was just like, oh, this is bad. And then sort of through the middle of the season, you kind of went, they're actually not too bad, and they're getting a lot better. And then down the stretch of the season, it kind of got a little bit ropey again. But it's I think it's getting better. They're using that technology better. I would like to see them bring in the that review system, because they had it in the bubble, and that was great. Like, how many times this season have you sat there and just been like, oh man, if we had a review right now, like, that was a terrible call. Like, you know, reviewed it and could have brought that into play. I thought they definitely could have kind of ninja'd that in on the fly and just like, you know what, every game's going to have this now. Like, we're bringing it in. But I definitely would like to see that come in next season. A little bit too much of these ones. Like, can we review that? Can we review that? Like, I guess that comes with now there being reviews, the review system, and it's kind of being done in the background. There's no going to the monitor. That's refreshing. I'm like, good. Like, I was sick of just saying, oh, boys, let's have a talk about it. Go to the monitor. They go to the monitor, they look at it, and they still make the wrong call. And you're just like, what was the point of that? Like, what the hell? Taking them out of the spotlight a little bit more, I think, has helped this season. And look, you know, I'm a little bit less upset about the refereeing than I was last season, because definitely last season I was like, whoa, this is like out of control. So hopefully we get a little bit more of an uptick going into next season. Anything else really just wider on the season? Should we go to some of the stats?
Yeah, let's go some stats that are going to blow our
You want to
minds.
see some stats? All right, I'm just going to change that. That's my big thing. Oh, sorry, I had to restart my machine. Sorry about that. I'll just get you back in on the screenshot. You probably won't be able to see it, but hey, let's see it. First thing I got up here, plus minus. Yikes! Like if you think about if you see the plus minus from last season, I'll see if I can bring it up. So many dudes were 100 plus, 150 plus. Like we were playing at a level. I think this team was kind of smarter and cohesive last season, and it showed kind of in the numbers. But this season there was some really ropey stuff in this plus minus. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this up. Where are you? Come up. No, you're not gonna do it. Yeah, there we go. I've even got. I'll just bring it over here. I've even got kind of the season before. So if you look at David Ware, what was David Ware's? Plus 27 on the season. That's pretty solid. If we go all the way back, Kevin Lish was plus 123, even Brad Newley plus 110. Those kind of numbers are hard to sort of replicate. And if we look at last season, the numbers were just great, astronomical. Shawnee Bruce plus 159 on the season. Didi was plus 117. JT Kickett was a plus 102. He was fantastic last season. And then you got Cooks. Who else? Where they're all quite high up there. Brad Newley had tapered off a little bit, but then if you come to sort of this season rather, some of these guys like Casper Ware pushed it up to plus 93 on the season, but if you look at Moller, ends up being a minus 21 on the season. DK a minus 68. He was minus 73 in the second half of the season, and that's rough, man. That's rough.
What about Jared Weeks?
Weeksy a minus 46. Coming in and giving us, some great minutes off the bench, minus 46. Struggler for him, but I think the numbers kind of bear out. Like if you look at these injuries, you don't see Angus Glover for the rest of the season. DK's injured in here. Didi's off with some injuries as well. Jarrell goes down. Xavier Cooks kind of plays out, and then you don't get any buy-in from your development guys at all, really. Like none of your kind of extra signings come in and make an impact. Tommy V went through a huge patch of just getting drilled as well, in some games where we got drilled in general. But I think that was very interesting to see that those numbers played out in that way, in that, some of these guys that were, plus 100 last year are plus 46 this year and minus 46 this year rather, especially in Brad Newley's case, and losing that ability to knit the team together. Your role is to come off the bench and knit this team together. And then, like in Moller's case, we've said it a lot this season, there's nothing knitted together. What am I doing? I'm stitches. Yeah. Where's the material to knit together? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it said a lot too, obviously, with DJ going down and Didi leaving, that those two are basically very high up on our plus minus as well, plus 74 for DJ.
At the end of the season, I've been laughing about for the last 3 weeks, it was just a cacophony of power forwards. And, we lost all our guards and we replaced them with, guards that got released by, bottom tier teams. And that's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately, with COVID and the lack of import spots. But we really, we lost 2, quality guards, one obviously to the NBA and one to injury. And that's, I think that was the difference towards the end of the season, is that in certain stretches, through no fault of Adam Ford's, there was just lack of scoring because we didn't have the facilitation, we didn't have the shooting. Casper was rough for a lot of the season, and in games he was very streaky. And Shawnee B didn't have the the best season in that respect. And outside of that, we just didn't have shooters. And if you don't have shooters, you're not going to score.
And I've got Paul Foxes here sort of saying the Kings head coach was only confirmed a few weeks before the season began. And we didn't touch on that at the start, where there was a fair bit of kind of upheaval before the season started. The coach comes in, he's an amateur coach. It's his first season. You kind of got to change your expectations to being, I hope he does well. I hope this guy does well and, puts together a good season that we can kind of build on. And the roster didn't fit that. The roster did not fit that at all, really.
The roster didn't fit that. I think we really didn't get, our best scorer till halfway through the season. Obviously, as an injury replacement. And you can only do so much with the roster that's put in front of you. And I don't think Adam Ford had a lot to do with developing this roster. Some of it was legacy, obviously, Next Stars, Will Weaver, probably putting DJ's, pen to paper and a few other bits and pieces. And you kind of, you get lumped in with whatever. And I think, as a, bit of salt before, but the reffing in the first half of the season was very much geared towards Adam Ford as a rookie coach. And it was, these guys getting rookie calls, which I think is just absurd. It's a game. You play it as equal as anyone else. So, I mean, you can look at that. I mean, Mike Kelly won Coach of the Year last year, and look what he did with Cairns this year. I think it's just roster and injuries. I don't think it's... I think the coach has a lot to do with developing talent, but in a 36-game season where you're hampered by certain import spots, I don't think the coach has the same level of impact as the NBA, say. That's my feel. I think, you got whole guys to get together. It's about team culture and guys wanting to play for each other. And I think Adam Ford did a fantastic job in that respect. He did that group. And like I said, they had heart all year. And that was an important part of this team because there was a lot of adversity due to injury and, probably lack of depth at certain positions that the injuries we went down with. And then hilariously playing with 7 power forwards for 8-game stretches and still pulling out a couple of wins here and there. So you can't really judge Adam Ford by this year. I think he's done a pretty good job first-year coach with a team that's really not been great and not great on paper, but just through no fault of their own, injury profiles, signings at different times of the year, lack of import spots for a team that's traditionally had more imports, and an extra going over to play in the NBA, which is a problem with any time with these guys that are drafted, stashed. There's NBA call-ups any time, so you kind of got to play the odds. And Perth and Melbourne have played the odds perfectly because they don't have any of those issues. They've had injury issues, but they've still been able to get there through certain means by having different guard depths, different depths at certain positions where we've had probably depths at the wrong positions, just purely based on roster makeup and what was available.
No, I think it's really important to sort of think that we're going to get to Diddy and we're going to get to Fordey after this when we do the gradings and stuff like that. But especially in Diddy's case, a second year, right, always makes it a little bit more volatile. Like a first year guy, you would sort of think they're definitely not going to get picked up and brought into the NBA straight away. But a second year guy, you're always like, ooh, it's a little bit of an extended gamble to think, and I think his extraneous circumstances also didn't really fit the basketballing mold as well. Like it was kind of like they had to bring him in a business sort of sense, or quick get him in, fill the roster spot, like tie him down. Like it was less about like, wow, this guy's been like phenomenal. Let's let's get him over. Like, cause there's been some chat about Justinian Jessup for the Hawks, Bob Myers possibly bringing him over straight away. And then again, like if you're the Hawks, you're running a risk in the second season. Like, oh, do we bring him back or like keep him on the roster because there is a possibility it might just be snatched up and brought back to the Warriors for any kind of reason like that. And this similar sort of thing happened with Diddy, and I think you're always open to that volatile spot. But I think our roster in general is galvanized enough to live with that. It was the injuries compounding that, obviously, that really, really hurt us. And that's, something that's kind of out of our control. But just looking at the deals here, I got them up here. Casper's deal comes off this season. So does Shawnee Bruce. Hunter's got 1 more year. Jarrell, was he 2 year? I tried to look that up and couldn't find anywhere where it said his contract, like what it was.
Don't think so.
Was it a single year?
Yeah, it was single year.
Oh, so he'll be off. So, we'll talk about him, but do you bring him back again? Craig Mollar's coming off. Brad Newley's coming off. DJ's locked down for 3 years. Tommy V's coming off. Diddy's obviously gone. Kiket's retired. Xavier Cooks is coming off. Jared Weeks, maybe you probably don't pick him up again. I like the cut of his game, but I don't think he came into a great situation. Then you're just kind of looking at the also rans. So there's going to be some huge issues with this roster that the front office are going to sort out. And with a new coach, that's going to make it incredibly difficult to kind of, get in and hit the ground running again. Like, where we were with Will Weaver, I don't think we're going to see that kind of cohesiveness over the next couple of seasons. Like, it's going to be a really good coach hire, really good roster reconstruction to just hit the ground running and do that.
That's it. And I think the other important thing is good franchises have a core of players that are there for years.
Yep.
Perth had Bryce Cotton, sorry. For years.
They did have Damien Martin.
Pardon?
They did have Damien Martin for years.
They did have Damien. But Bryce Cotton, Damien Martin, Mitch Norton, Nick Kay, they had these players in Melbourne, Chris Golding, Mitch McCarron, these core players that are there year in, year out. And it's very hard to have any kind of thrust. It doesn't work in the NBA. I don't think it works here blowing up. I think it takes a couple of years to build a good core of players, get them to play together, and then see what happens. And, that's why I'd be tempted to bring a lot of these guys back and then just add better pieces around them for the next season. Although there is a whole new NBL team coming into the next season, which is going to add a little bit of an interesting, wrinkle in things, because there's going to be, another 10 roster spots up for the taking, which could lure guys away for, the promise of more money in their first season.
Yeah, it's again another, like, the expansion kind of hurts. Like, thinking about that now that you've just mentioned it, the expanding of the league kind of hurts, because there's going to be another 12 players now that we're not going to be able to, we're going to have to be in and fighting for another 12 players, basically, because if the new Tasmanian franchise want to go in elbows first into some of these tussles for players, then we're going to have to be in there trying to fight for that market. So, it compounds it again. Just looking at some of the stats, I opened up the team stats here and just added it. Free throws attempted. Perth I don't know if you can read that, but Perth by far the most free throws, and that says a lot, doesn't it? 737 for them. I mean, this includes the other night's game. I had actually saved it and then I restarted my machine, so now it's just updated again, which was annoying. But yeah, Cairns free throws attempted 555, and then Perth 737. So that's a huge disparity between the worst team in the league and the best team in the league. Like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is. That is a lot.
So there you go. If you look at our stats, though, in the grand scheme of things, let's what can we do to fix this? Points. We were fifth in points total. Again, this includes the games from the finals, which has been annoying. But as a team, I don't think we shot the ball that well. Like, we're always kind of struggling for scheme. If you look, field goal percentage, 44%, 49%, 77% from the free throw line. That's not great. You kind of want to get that up near 80. And then threes, shooting the three ball at 33% as a team. Never felt like at times we had just, we're knocking them down. Like, this is a great team. It was always, a an uphill struggle. Getting this team
when
to shoot threes.
DJ had his feet planted. That's the only time this year you really felt that was going in. Lowest in steals. That's very interesting.
We were, man. Could you feel that though? We were not a handsy, not a hard defense team, and we were also there's a couple of calls, and then it was just like, okay, we'll just play with our hands up then, Yeah. I'd like to see some more sort of dig down defense over the next couple of seasons, like getting in some guys that are good at digging down and ripping the ball. Cooks was really good at doing that this season. Obviously, we missed him.
It is, well.
True. Rebounding the ball. We were fifth in rebounds. And then assists-wise, we were quite high up at the start of the season. We were averaging, I think, in the first 7 or 8 games, I think we were averaging around 20 assists a game, which is pretty good for us. And then we kind of struggled. And then, one of the least assisting teams in the league, Perth being one of the best. It kind of showed. I feel like our game was very isolation heavy. Casper's not a pass first point guard, and I don't think showed enough kind of, you can go into a mode of assisting. I always felt like that was just awkward and uncomfortable. And anytime he had a game where he, had 7 or 8 assists and didn't have the points, it never felt like smooth and in the flow of what was happening. It was always felt awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's kind of just his game, though, isn't it?
It's true.
And you know what? There was more emphasis on Shawnee Bruce to score as well this year, instead of diming people up, because there wasn't really anyone to pass it to that was open to shoot. Really, it was all drive and a lot of ISO, a lot of breakdown play as well, which was kind of annoying.
So much Shawnee like starting too, and that just not working for most of the season. You're just like, this is not really working. It doesn't. As a two guard, he didn't shoot the ball enough. As a two guard, kind of facilitated a little bit too much and didn't look for a shot. Like we saw him towards the end of the season go to that foul line jumper, and that foul line jumper was working for him. And then it just, instead of going, oh, that's a good way to score, you kind of just like really starkly put into contrast how little he was doing that at the start of the season. He was just like, why were you not scoring the ball like this? And then obviously like this swing back to Shawnee Bruce, he was kind of knocking those down towards the end of the season too. Whereas earlier on in the season, the ball just didn't move. The ball just didn't hop around to get back to Shawnee. It was kind of just a bit uncomfortable. Another one of those uncomfortable things. Just on the stats, best field goal percentage. I keep getting those shots of those awful mug shots from when they were in college. Geordie Hunter with the best field goal percentage, 57.5%. Xavier Cooks definitely, I think, was one of the better players around the rim as well. We really missed him. And then Jarrell at 50%. I think super important. His offense was great, rather than, if he comes back, rather than we get him into these positions where he's scoring in isolation, I think we can definitely maneuver him into a scoring position where he gets these open looks, has to rely less on crazy step backs, and you're just like, what? Like, wow, what a move. Like one dribble, hezzy, step back, and it's just like a big man doing this is great. But there was just too much of that, man, this season.
Yeah, too unreliable game in, game out.
And he could do it. Like, he showed he could do it. But you were just like, oh, man, like, can't we get this guy easy buckets? Like, let's get this guy some easy buckets. Looking at 3-point percentage, Tommy V on low amounts was up there around 42%. I think at one point ended up in 37.5%. That kind of dropped off. And then Craig Moller, who was, I think, down at about 23%, sort of very early doors. He ended up bringing it all the way up to 37.9% and became pretty reliable. And I always felt like kind of DJ, after DJ went down, like Jarrell was still reliable from three. Like
yeah, fairly, yeah.
It was
Shawnee
good.
Bruce, 32.
Yeah, he didn't get enough like wide open with his feet set. Like when his feet are set, he can knock them down. Like there was too much shot creation for him, I think. And, the ball just didn't swing around. And when he was playing at the two guard, it was just like, well, what's the point of this? Because he wants catch and shoots. Like he wants to initiate play, run plays, play make. And then the ball just doesn't come back to him to knock down shots. Like the ball comes back to him to just do a Casper. Like, you got any hezzy, any dribble? You're going to take a step back, Shawnee B? Like, I know it's just not his game, I think.
No.
Very
76 of 250. Wow.
That's very rough, man. Very rough.
That is, for that volume of shooting, it's just, that's not acceptable for a marquee player.
That's unacceptable. Let's look at it in the whole league. What he ended up being in 3-point percentage, going all the way down. What did we say it was? 30?
30.4. They are 79th. 77th.
77th. Wow, in the league. Taking 250. That's just way too many. Who took the most? I'm intrigued. Because there was at one point that Cam Oliver took just a ridiculous amount. Tyler Harvey, yeah, definitely, man. He takes some horrendous shots, man. Just horrendous shots. And then Sobe, yeah, legit. Goulding and Cotton and Blanchfield as well.
Cotton only 32%. That's interesting.
He's generally not a high 3-point percentage. His damage is kind of done off the dribble. Inside playmaking, and he can knock them down in the clutch. Toddy Blanchfield taking 250, yeah, legit. And then some of these other guys.
jae'sean, how did he even take it? Was he even on the floor that much? 213. Wow, 33%. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just throwing them up. But again, steals, like you said, we were the lowest steals. Casper Ware 26 steals. Like, do you look at Casper and go, wow, like defensive, handsy?
Yes. That's the one thing I
Yeah.
feel Casper. Yes, I feel Casper
Okay.
Ware
Yeah.
is
Fair
the
enough.
best defensive guard in the league. Where he struggles
But like
to add,
pickpocket styles.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
a lot of pulling the chair and picking up the ball afterwards. A
Spot
lot
it.
of pickpockets. One steal a game is for a league is still pretty low. Less than one steal a game is low for a defensive player, but I do think that's one of his strengths. If you look at kind of guards of his match, Kiefer Sykes is a bit of Tyler Harvey's terrible on defense. Like he is a solid defender and can handle a mismatch somewhat. So no, I don't disagree with that, but that for your best defensive player is still not enough for a season.
Just looking at last year's Shawnee B, only had 100 assists. I would have thought he was a little bit higher up there because he is always kind of one of the main playmakers off the bench. He went up 126 assists this season. Then Casper again with the most assists. For a guy that's not, pass first, that's not a legitimate, genuine playmaker, I think that's kind of tells a little bit of a story in that, some of these other guys not shooting the higher percentages is due to the fact that some of these other guys weren't getting assists and playmaking as much. It was a lot of like single ball handler playmaking out of ISO situations. That screams to me that type of scenario. Yeah. These stats. And then blocks too. I'm pretty sure we were quite low down in the blocks. I'm just going to bring it up from memory. 6th. Perth have the least blocks. What? Did not know that. Come back. Geordie Hunter with 38 blocks. No, solid. Pretty solid for the season. Not too bad.
Definitely.
So yeah, there's some of the stats. Anything else that like popped out in your mind that you wanted to go through with the individual stats? Because we're going to get on to grades in a minute.
Probably the most disappointing season for my mind was Brad Newley. I think they're going from the last 2 seasons before that, really when we kind of started the podcast, even in the David Ware seasons, Brad Newley was a beast. When he was getting downhill, it was on. And his 3 ball was falling. And then this season, he just felt like he just was absent.
Yeah, just passive and
and absent and not really there and not getting to his corner, Brad. And it was just weird. It wasn't really a Brad. I don't know if he was injured or what, if he was a bit, it wasn't.
Yeah, like, I don't know, veteran. He's a veteran on this team, but not a rev 'em up veteran. Revving you up, I'm in your face, I'm there, like come on boys, like let's go. Like he's never been that kind of player, but I think this season the leadership style was evident in his demeanor and stuff. In that, like very very passive. And I don't know, like I respect his game, and a lot of the times this season I was just anytime he had the ball, I'd be going, there's no big at home, get to the hole. Like, and it's obviously really, it's easy for us to sit here watching a telecast going, get to the hole, like we see the whole court. But even instinctively, like last year, there was a lot of like, he would just get the ball and go, and that would kind of push us on, spur us on. But there wasn't really that much of this season. So no. I think it's up to a coach to come in and go to Brad Newley, like, your game is getting to the hole, and anytime you have the ball, just push it. I don't care. And I've kind of have been like thinking this over in my head that if I was the coach and I was telling him to do it, I still don't feel like he would do it. Like it's kind of that mental thing in him, and like I thought he played like that this season in the fact that even if you were going like Brad, get to the hole, Brad, like he kind of wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that this season? There was a little bit like that.
That's what I mean. It was just felt a bit passive. But at certain instances, he'd hold up play, or if he'd get to the hole, it was not with the same vigor. I don't know. Maybe his body's, not the same as it once was. But in stretches, I was just a bit disappointed.
Just kind of falling in love with the 3 as well. And this season he shot it. What did he shoot it at? Yeah, something. Like, he was up there at the start of the season. 2021 season, 28%. Wow. Whoa. But struggle. All right, we'll move to the grades. I'm just gonna go. The first guys are the ungradables, and the guys that fall into that category. Unfortunately, I can't show you this, so you're gonna have to just take my lead from this. So the ungradables, Lockie Hutchinson. Although I think we can talk individually about some of these guys and how they did this season. Like I think definitely Lockie kind of showed he's probably three. Like, I don't know if he's at an Emmett Nar level. Like, he still looks like he's like 3 or 4 years away from even being like, oh, okay, I can evaluate you now. But at the same time, he had a couple of really good moments coming in, burgling a couple of charges. That was good.
Lockie
Little
Hutchinson, the charge burglar.
Yeah.
A little bit passive, especially in games where he needed to be assertive, dominant. When Bruce was out, just take the ball and shoot. No one cares, man. Or just looking for the pass first at his own detriment. And it's different when you're a 6'10" point guard with, some of the best players in the league around you. But when you're on Sydney, sometimes you just got to take it by the balls and shoot. And he just didn't do that enough in my mind. But again, I don't know. You don't know what he's being told by the coach. You don't know what he feels. If there's like, oh, I'm a development player, I shouldn't do this. But, I think there's a couple of games there where I've just shoot. Who cares? There's nothing to lose in this situation where, we're down to our, fifth string lineup. You're going to have to shoot a few baskets. And there was a few times where we shot clock violations because it was just hot potatoes and not good enough. But potential, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think I don't know how old he is. Actually, I might just quickly look that up. It might take a bit of
we should say that he's probably the most talented out of the development play. 21 years old.
21, yeah. So probably, I don't know. I don't even know what development player eligibility is. I probably should know that, but I don't. I don't see if a development player is coming in and grabbing that role, you kind of want him to do a little bit more than that, which kind of leads me into Galloway. When Galloway was thrown into that Adelaide game, like, you actually had a sense of, oh, this guy's actually kind of competing. Like, it wasn't great. Like, he made a couple of little heads up plays, a couple of bonehead plays, but at the same time, it didn't feel like we were really kind of going to a development player when he came out on the floor. No?
Yeah, it's kind of what Jordan Hunter was 2 seasons ago.
And a little bit Dane Pinoe as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Galloway and Woodhill, I think Woodhill was definitely like the Lockie Hutch version of, a few years away. I think but when Galloway was out there, I was like, oh, Galloway's, can hold his own. He has some power. He has a decent enough frame, decent basketball IQ. Didn't shoot the ball that great, but at the same time, kind of gave an account of himself. I'd be very interested to see, again, another power forward. Would be great in Fordey system, the ultimate power forward team. And then to Glover, unfortunately injured in the second game against the Taipans, a knee clash. The 4 weeks, he'll be back in 4 weeks, that turned into like the entire season he was out. So
yeah,
that was interesting in itself. But yeah, a bit of a shame, man. I think it's unlucky for him. He's definitely a likable player. I don't think, guy that you would sort of say, well, we really missed him, but at the same time, like, I think he was a good, solid young player. And at the same time, it's easier to kind of compare that to Detch, where you're just like, man, why didn't we not get Detch? And we were saying it. I went back to some of our pods last season, at the back end of last season. We were just like, get Detch, seriously, get that guy. Like, we need that guy. And he had a decent season for Adelaide, and it's a shame for Glover, but that knee injury. And then Kernich Drew, the last one, basically, coming in. What can you say about him? Like, I think there was a couple of games in there. I think with the game we went to, he came in, missed a few assignments, a couple of turnovers, and it was just like we never saw him again. So yeah, can't really grade him. And that rounds out the ungradables. I think, I think Weeksy, I kind of wanted to put Weeksy in here, but I definitely think Weeksy had enough there to go, we're giving him a grading.
Well, he had enough there. He also played a full season for New Zealand, so we did see him in other aspects as well. So he's had a full season of basketball.
But for us, he was borderline, but at the same time, like, I still wanted to just like, boom, like, he deserves a score because he came in and he didn't really do that much as a kind of more veteran player. So moving into that, I'll be doing these on the fly, so I'll do yours first, and then I'll save it, and then mine after that. So Weeksy, what are your thoughts? Let's go thoughts, talk a little bit, and then you can give grading.
Didn't really think he fit the team. It was kind of just a knee-jerk reaction to someone who was available.
He's got a pulse. Get him in.
He can breathe. Let's play him. what more can I say? You get let go by the New Zealand Breakers. For what reason? I'm not sure, but I don't really care. He wasn't really having a great season for the Breakers either. Came into the City team, could quite easily see that he hadn't really fit the mold. Not a strong ball handler, not really a strong shooter, just kind of a guy who's been around the league for a long time, playing backup point guard. It's not what we needed down the stretch of the season. And for that one, it's kind of a D.
D?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's it was rough. Like even what he brought for us, like the thought of Jared Weeks, right? You go, oh, hustles a bit, can shoot it, like not a great shooter, but a streaky shooter. Plays quick, and I like that. Even watching him come in and just like rush the ball up the court, and then turn around and just be like, no one's in the front court. Like, what's going on here? Like, what the hell's going on? Kind of said a lot that he didn't just go, oh, well, I'll adjust my game and I'll work on this. And a lot of the time in those last few games, he would just rush the ball up and then nothing be going on. We set up, we'd initiate, and it was just like, man, this just does not work. But yeah, just rough, man. A rough signing for him, rough stuff. If he came back, I wouldn't be upset, right? I wouldn't be going, oh man, that's a waste of a roster spot, because I can kind of see the potential he could give a team, like with the speed in which he plays. But that's about it, man. A D plus for me, D plus. And I kind of want to have him in there with a chance to just kind of go D, because it was a huge. What's going on? Save. Yeah, there we go. That's popped up now. So let's move to Xavier Cooks. I'm going minutes here. So yep. The amount of minutes, Cooks was next, obviously with that injury, half a season, but though he did come back, what were your thoughts on Cooksy?
From my mind, Cooks is an A. You can quite clearly see his skill level is outside the NBL, and it's a shame that the season kind of eluded him. Brought a little bit of the three ball to the game, 5 of 10, low volume, but I mean, first season we didn't see that at all. In the summer league we didn't see that at all. So that was definitely a bonus. Can play multiple positions. He can play 3, 4, 5. He can guard 5. He's quick. Very good defensively. His offensive game is getting stronger. His ball handling ability is strong. He can read the plays. His facilitating is good. He's a marquee player, and he. We only saw him in limited minutes, but I mean, he would have been the deciding factor, I think, most of the season. Bar everything else, if we didn't lose Cooks to injury, I think we'd be in the finals. Yeah,
I think it's hard to say that over an entire season of 36 games, but I do think he was a massively important miss this season. It's a testament to him as a player. I think the development trajectory he's gone on over the last couple of years has been very, very steep. And even coming into the FIBA game, you can see those tools, that length, the quickness, the ability to kind of play make in the broken space, I think is an underrated trait of his as well. The shooting's not really there, and it definitely wasn't there at the start of like when he came last season. Like you could tell, it's like a bit reluctant to shoot, but the other things he does are great. I think this season he'd worked on his shot a little bit too. Like in the first game, he shot a couple that he got injured. In the preseason game, he shot a couple of those and kind of looked like the stroke was back, and even coming back. But yeah, we just missed that extra defensive body too. Like he's so good around the rim, these little like body up and rip down moves.
Well, that if you have him and Martin on the floor, it's just positive because he doesn't miss rotations. Jordan Hunter and Martin on the floor are just 2 defensive rotations missed.
Yep.
And it's a liability. And Cooks adds that 4-5 versatility where he can come on and play small ball center. Defensively, can play against the best bigs in the league. And then you have that, you don't worry so much about Martin's lack of defense.
Yeah.
And that's really what we missed a lot of the season. In a lot of games, that would have been the deciding factor for my mind. Even though you've got a team of power forwards, Xavier Cook's definitely one of them that you want in there.
Yeah, he could have played all like from 2 all the way to 5. So I went with a B+. I don't think he did enough to kind of get an A. Like, a B+, I think is good for me, but definitely try and sign him and get him back next season because it's going to be huge. if we can kind of build around him as a versatile guy. Daniel Kickett, interesting player to sort of talk about, has retired now too.
And it was warranted. I think the long off season on that frame, last season you could kind of see he was slowing down, and an extended off season with lack of training. I just don't think he ever got his rhythm back. He's good in a couple of games. His shooting wasn't as good this year. His defense was definitely not as good this year. He was a step slower. And, it was kind of, it was another warm body we could throw in at the center spot with no Xavier Cooks that could, put up a couple of points a night. For what he's done for the game, how good he was for a number of years as one of the best shooters that the local league's ever seen. Played well for Australia. Famous Australia versus Philippines fight was in there, fighting for Australia.
the old Filipino elbow.
That's it, mate. That was it. So you can't hate him, but from a season perspective, I mean, it was time to go. It was time to retire. His body did not look like it could give much more. I'm going to give him a C just because it's Daniel Kickett. But I mean, if it wasn't Daniel Kickett in some random, I'd probably give him a D- because, there was not much left for him to give, but what he did give, he could.
Yeah, and I think to go back to the first season we had him, he was definitely exposed with that team where you were like, whoa, like get him out of that choker spot. Like all he can do is stand there with his arms up. That's about it. He doesn't have any lateral quickness. We fixed that last season and kind of went, all right, you got JT, you got Cooks, you got some other bodies you can throw it dudes, and DK can kind of exist in this little space going in and out of going downhill and coming up to the 11 o'clock spot and shooting a three. And that's a perfect role for him. And then suddenly back to this season, it was like, well, DK, you're going to have to play make a little bit, get in the post, play defense. You and Jarrell, are you a combo that works? No, you're not a combo that works. Hunter and DK, you a combo no, you're not a combo that works. And that was just kind of going back to last year's, the year before's DK, where it was very evident, I think, that retirement was on the cards. I mean, you never want to look at a guy as likable as Kickett and go, man, you need to retire. But there was definitely a few times this season where it was like, man, like it's time. And I think retired at the exact right time. It's a shame that last year didn't kind of become fruitful for him to win a championship. Yeah. Because I definitely think his career deserved to go out, like with the last couple of years winning some silverware. And disappointing for him, although I think what a career though, man. Like what an amazing player. I think to do what he's done, 50, 40, 90 guy, it's just unbelievable, man. Like he was really a great player and had a great career, not just in the NBL, but for the international team as well. And yeah, I think he'll be missed veteran-wise in our club as well because, another veteran dude who can hold his own as well. I went with a C as well, so... but I feel like, we might have to do some sort of tribute or something for him or something.
Highlights reel. Maybe we'll get a highlights reel going.
Highlight reel. See if we can compress time and space with him jumping off the floor with his vacuum lift. Didi Lozada was the next one on the list for the bench guys. Coming off the bench, a little bit of an injury issue. Had a couple of injury issues, rather, this season. Interesting season. Second season. Ended in... having to leave early. I think in terms of his NBL development, leaving early was definitely kind of early. Like I don't think he had kind of matured and blossomed NBL wise yet this season. Do you feel like?
No, I think that what he was picked up for was his ability to guard multiple positions 1 through 3. I think his length, and I think that's really where a lot of teams in the NBA are looking for that defensive 2-3 that can maybe score a little bit. And we didn't see a lot of good scoring from Didi this year. Although, look, he's one of those guys that you couldn't really... It's hard to give an overall grade to because in certain instances he played terribly offensively, but in certain instances he was the team and he was, the number one player for games. And defensively, you could put him on Cotton and Cotton was just struggling, and you could put him on Goulding, and Goulding would struggle. He was
a couple of good games against Sobey too.
Yeah, some elite defensive plays, and that's why he was picked up in early. Is just I think New Orleans was just like, okay, we need to. There's some sparkle of offense, and we need to get him over here to develop that in the off season because defensively he's ready. He's ready to play NBA basketball.
Yeah.
In terms of what he brought to the team, I mean, it was kind of priceless, really. He was the integral part of the team. I'd probably give his season an overall B.
Yeah.
I think that's probably relevant to the not the offensive season he had, but just the defensive. He's probably one of the best defensive players in the league in terms of how he could shut down scorers, how he wouldn't miss rotations, and how he'd lock in on certain players. And I think that you're not really going to get another player like that in the league for a number of years. Although his offensive game at times was left to be desired, I think that's defensively very much missed.
Shooting the ball, like for him, who is a natural shooter, I think he is a natural shooter. He showed that developing when he was playing in South America, and for the Kings a little bit as well. That part, I think, as an NBA player can be honed, but the fundamental defensive stuff, I think you're right, was what set him apart in his development where he was at. Because I still felt like he was undercooked. Even watching him this season, I was like, he's still not ready. Like, he's got some injury issues. He's got some little bit of scoring stuff that he kind of needs to work on. But at the same time, you could always see that NBA trajectory, like was there. Like, at any time they could have taken him, and even at the end of last season they could have taken him, or where they did halfway through this season they took him. It was still like, I'm not worried about him. He's going to be a lot, he's going to develop in the US and be a much, much better NBA talent than what's happening at this in this kind of Sydney Kings NBL sort of scenario. And I want to say, he's going to be a great player, but I still am a bit disappointed with what he was kind of giving us. I don't know if he was injured or something like that, and I still kind of want to go, I don't think we saw the best of him from what we thought.
Agree. I think, remember that game we went to Illawarra to watch him in the preseason, and he just went off, and
he
we
absolutely torched them.
Just single-handedly blew that team out of the water.
Yeah, you and I left that game just going oh my God, if this is anything like we're going to get this season, he's going to just torch the entire league.
And I think injuries kind of hampered that. I think lower back injuries, you can see it at certain times.
Had some cramp stuff as well.
Yeah. But I think the mold of the NBA, and I think, Matisse Thybulle has shown what a single-handed defensive bench player can do. Didi's never going to be a $20 million guard. He's going to be a guy that's, $6 million 4-year contract. You come on down the stretch of games to guard Kyrie Irving. You come down the stretch of games to guard.
He's always going to be like a Clay to a Steph rather than a Steph,
Yeah, Jamal Murray or Donovan Mitchell. He's a locked-in 6'5" long defender who's quick. That's where his position in the NBA is going to be. If he can score a bit as well, then that's a bonus for the Pelicans. But I mean, that's really where he is. He's going to be in that kind of two-spot defensive, oversized shooting guard who's long, and that's kind of what we saw him at Sydney this year. Just happened to be at a point where we really didn't have a lot of scorers, and so that was kind of evident in certain stretches that no one could get going because there was a lack of scoring options. But for what he was, what he could be, I agree, undercooked. But Pelicans obviously wanted to get him into the system for the next year, for obviously a push for postseason. So I think B's a fair
B for you. I went with C. I've also taken all the plus minuses out because they messed with the formatting, so no more plus minuses, plus and minuses. I went with a C. I think B's probably the trajectory of where he would have finished this season, where he was heading. But I still, that undercookedness kind of makes it a C for him because I don't think that attack on the attacking end, on the offensive end, kind of let down really what he was as a player and what he gave to this team. Although, wish him luck, and I definitely think he was a lovable player too, and another guy you were just like, I can get behind this guy, which is also important as well in this franchise, especially in the NBL, which is kind of like a smaller league in the grand scheme of things. It's a kind of a small fish in a big pond type thing. Moving to your man, Tommy Vodanovic, started the season with the what would you say, I can't think of what the word is. Lovable. No, what's the word for when you endear, a term of endearment? I definitely think Tommy Vaudeville coming into this situation, but very quickly. Tommy, like we couldn't even think of what that you just had to like tweak your brain. We were like, oh yeah, Tommy Vaudeville. We were calling him that at the start of the season. Definitely got his name back, and I definitely think, blossomed into a very likable character off the bench. I'm talking too much, man. You need to take it away because he's your man.
Definitely, I think that for the role he was brought into play and what he delivered, I think it was unlucky that really he's a power forward, and down the stretch of the season we had an abundance amount of power forwards, and so we really didn't get a chance, really a chance to kind of play that backup position. One of the purest shooting form techniques, I think, in the league. Young, I think he's got a long way to go.
Is he young?
He's like 24.
Is he? Kind of got that veteran vibe.
I don't think he is. I think he's only young.
He is 26. Yeah, that's 26. Young enough.
Young enough.
I always felt like he was in his 30s. I don't know. He had that veteran style game.
It's that Kiwi head, mate.
Yeah, it's that Kiwi Conor McGregor style look that he's got.
Look, for the season he had, for what was his expectations, what he gave us in stretches. I mean, you can't go past a B, as a lovable larrikin. In times, obviously, defensively, maybe a little bit of a liability. Gave his all. In certain instances, he was all the offense we had. Going to Tommy in the post. That's how deep we were going. But I think he, definitely could have him back as a depth bench player. I think he's definitely earned his stripes in that respect. Just needs to get his defense a little bit more evolved.
Yeah.
Also, he was kind of reffed off the floor a whole bunch by the referees. Just
I think silly fouls. Yeah. So yeah, some silly ones. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But on the flip side, there was just a lot of like that flow chart that I put out. Did he place defense? Yes, foul. Like there was a lot of that this season, and we'll get to Hunter, but there was a lot of that on him too. But there was some bigs this season where it was just like anything they were calling, and it was almost like let's just call it and then work it out later. And in Tommy's case, the hustle was so deserved with what he was providing too. Like the more hustle he gave, the spark off the bench, I think that was really getting this team going as well. And then to hit that brick wall of just any time he was getting on this defensive rhythm, he would just get reffed off the floor. That was just brutal, absolutely brutal for him. Offensively, can knock down a three. I think if he takes that kick it spot, from last year, 4 or 5 minutes off the bench, I'm in on that. A little lift in some of these other games where you need a bigger guy to give you a bit of a lift. I definitely think he could have a little bit of a spot. But for what he gave, I went with a B. I think in an isolated situation, what he gave you needs to have the context of what he was as a player. Like really, there's the expectations portion. Definitely looking at him, just going, what is this guy going to provide? Like who knows? To wow, this is actually some pretty good stuff. To a level that he got to where you were like, wow, like I think he started a couple of games as well where you were like, definitely deserves like what he's getting here in terms of minutes, rotation, offense. They'll throw in post-ups. He was like initiating offense. There was dribble handoffs and stuff like that. And then kind of tapered off to the end of the season. And I think if he was a more established player, you kind of like, you're getting into C territory for the way he finished the season.
Yeah.
But I think for an injury replacement to come in and give that, B, man, a definite B for me. And you are much higher on him, and I think a B is pretty good.
He's good.
Bradley Newley. Oh, what a rough season. You can talk about him.
Yeah. I don't really know what to say. I mean, we all know Brad Newley. He's played here for many years in this league. He's been around since, day dot. Couple of big seasons. Fantastic player. And one word, just passive. This season, just passive. For my mind, I'd say it's a D.
D?
A D. Just very disappointing. I don't know whether it's his body. I don't know whether it was the time off. I think from what we saw last year to this year, very, very passive. Like it just almost he was a shadow playing in the team. You know, wasn't front and center, wasn't out in transition a whole lot. And yeah, just disappointing season.
It's funny you mentioned the off-season stuff because in those podcasts, the Hoops Collective or Capital, whatever they are, he like when he talks, right, he's quite learned sounding and quite a deep thinker sounding, a little bit weaverish. And when I listened to those, we were talking about his off season where he was just like, oh, I just went out in the bush, really got away from it all. It kind of like just tweaked in my mind a little bit and just went, that's actually really a good representation of how you play the game. Like, for example, if a fight's going on, you're definitely not looking at Newley to get in there, like staunch up and be like, come on, you want to go? You want some of this? Yeah. He's a guy that's going to be like, oh, boys, like, come on, it's just a game type of thing. And I think that kind of encapsulates how he played this season, where he existed beside what the camaraderie of this team was. Although, in a basketball sense, he still gave that hustle and that doggedness, right? But it wasn't like wild and... I don't know. I want to see if we do retain him next season. I want to see him get wild again, man, because he definitely has a game where it's just like the wilder you are, the more your game benefits us, being able to get to the hoop, pushing in transition, really get out and run. The more, if you're a coach, you're looking at that going, yes, like I want that in my team because, you can make this team play a lot faster. But I still, again, like I said before, look at him and I go, I feel like even if we were a coach going, yes, do this, he kind of just wouldn't do it because it feels like it's that type of mental thing and not a sense of, I wasn't given any license, so I didn't do anything. Like I still feel like, as a veteran in this team, he didn't do the veteran thing and just lead by example. Yeah. Does that feel like that? I might be missing the mark on that, but
I think it's also a mentality thing of maybe, veterans in a local league that don't necessarily have to put in the work. I mean, if you want to stay in the NBA, you watch at LeBron train in the off season. You look at Carmelo train in the off season. You look at these guys that are 35, 36. They don't have an off season. They go straight into postseason training. They get their body right for the season to come. You don't see that from veterans in local leagues. They kind of they get there based on their presence, and you can see the trajectory of how much they fall off in a couple of seasons past about 34. They're just not the same. And whether that's, a mentality thing, whether that's the money, it's not worth the toll on the body because of the money, or it's just because it's a guaranteed contract. You don't know really. I don't know the mentality behind it, but that just seems to be what it was,
Yeah, it's this whole bit disappointing. It's Aussie culture too, like family man, and I definitely think he's a family man, and I respect him for that. And it's definitely an honourable trait in the way he plays the game too. And a kicker's kind of the same, where you're like family man, doesn't really matter that much, No, maybe it doesn't. I'm a professional. Yeah. Professional sports in Australia are less about the glamour and the that whole aspect of it, and more about I play the game hard. And yeah, I'm just hoping next season he comes back. If he does come back, he plays the game hard. I went with the C. D's a bit harsh for me. I was like, oh, it's a bit harsh. But I definitely think, C. It's a not above pass grade.
No.
And I'll just save that. And then Craig Moller, bit of a surprise package to end the season, I think.
Obviously you can probably put the points up. It'd be interesting to see where he kind of ended MVP voting, because it seems like Craig was always on the table for, top 3 players in a game. I think if your expectations are that he's one of the best bench players in the league, you're about right. Gives everything, hustle god, offensive rebounding genius, brought the 3-ball back, brought some bloody, turning, shooting, fading kind of shots, tried to get the offense going when nothing would fall, not always successful, but, kind of the heart and soul of the team, really. Had a fantastic season, for what it is. For what he's done, what he's provided the team, it's definitely an A for me.
It's an A from me too. I think he's definitely had a rough start to the season, and I think it's super commendable. Like very early on in the season, there was some, post-game stuff, or there was some interview stuff where they were like, what's going on with that 3-ball, shooting at 20%. And he's just like, I'm working on it, and I'm working hard, and hopefully it kind of, those percentages get up there. And I love the fact that he just was taking them and they suddenly were going down, and he was getting confident, and he got really confident shooting it, and then that was rewarding him. And that's the kind of thing where the level that he's at, the personality he has, the way he plays the game, the bonus impact that he gives on the glass, in hustle, defensively, it all just ties into this package of like super likable guy. Really, really important piece. We said last year he was a bit of a glue guy, knitting this team together. This year he didn't have that much to glue together. It was kind of more about, Craig, what kind of offense can you give us? Like defensively, can you anchor a defense? Second unit, can you even come into the starting lineups and close games as well in crunch time? And I thought he not necessarily, smashed everything out of the park, but he still gave enough of like a pass with, high distinction. So I went with A as well. I'm just going to save that really quickly before we talk a little bit more about him. Just the attitude, man, like the way he played the game, really, to contrast Brad Newley, the way he played was like hard on the sleeve stuff, and that was rewarding his offense and his defense. And I can't say any more like great things about him. And I would love to have him back next season. Hopefully he comes back. I think he'll be a super important bench piece. That pretty much rounds out the bench guys. You didn't want to say anything else about Craig?
No, that's it.
No, those dreads, pretty good. I think he got a soaking in one of those games. I think that's the first time those dreads have been washed. Bada-cha. We've recycled that joke.
Gatorade.
Yeah, so let's go to the starters now. Starting with DJ, who obviously unfortunately got injured very early on, about halfway through the season. That was a massive, massive blow. But anyway, talk about your thoughts on DJ.
To me, he's kind of like a JJ Redick clone.
I don't think he's got the runaround game. He's more than that, I feel like. I think he can knock it down, but I think he's a long cuts guy. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, he's long cuts. He's more of he can get to the hoop quick off the dribble, like much quicker than we expected.
He's a like tight spaces guy, which I like anyway.
Yeah, he's probably the only one in the team where you're like, okay, that's going down. He shot that's going down. What else can you say about him? Unfortunately, he's got one of the worst injuries you can have in basketball. And that really kind of derailed our season. Easily, if he'd continued on, he would have won Rookie of the Year by a country mile. The fact that he was still in the Rookie of the Year discussion, he didn't even play half the year, just shows you how good he had at the start of the season. I mean,
who was the third guy in that? There was DJ, it was Justinian Jessup. Who was the other guy? I should know this, but...
What would you call
it? Anywho, let's not waste too much time.
Let's not waste too much time on other people. A+. What
but exactly, I think that kind of encapsulates what we're talking about. It's just like, who was that other guy again? Like, he missed half the season and he's still, you know what I mean? Like, he's still top quality. Oh no, what's going on? I've just messed this a little bit up. Here we go. So you went with A, right? No pluses or minus, but it was an A+, right?
Yeah, it was an A+.
I went with B. I think what he gave us was definitely an A, but then the injury kind of like takes a little bit of and just a little bit down. I think a B also gives him a chance to like next season come out. Like there's not as much expectation on like after that post injury, because you're right. Like that, it was Achilles injury, right?
Yeah.
It
wasn't a full thickness tear; it was a partial thickness tear.
Okay, I was blotting that out of my mind a bit because injuries and stuff. But I just hope he comes back with the same sort of explosiveness. That's the part where I'm like, oh man, like for a guy who
he's more likely to get that back because it was not a full thickness tear of the Achilles; it was partial. I think it was about 60%, which means that he still would have had strength in muscle fibers attached. So he's more likely to have a better outcome with that injury than a full thickness tear where you pretty much, you snap the Achilles. It wasn't quite that.
Yeah, it didn't snap. I remember there was one where someone's Achilles snapped and they found the tendon like up in his thigh. Is that possible? Or is that just an old wives' tale? Or like a tendon snapped somewhere, it went up into his leg.
You can probably get up towards his knee.
Yeah,
but
maybe
not
it
in
was
the
that.
style.
Maybe it was like I've just embellished the tale over time. Oh, injuries, man. Far out. I hate injuries just thinking about it. Just thinking about the recovery part, knowing the mental stress. Like one of the good examples is looking at like Hayward, 2 years coming back from that injury. I always frame an injury around that kind of mentality where just 2 years, man. Like you got to like give it a little bit of time. No guy comes back fully like I'm just coming back absolutely blazing after a major injury.
Kevin
And
Durant.
yeah, that guy's a freak though. Like he's like got noodles, you know. He's got noodle body parts. But for DJ, his speed, his intelligence, his shooting of the ball, like a lot of his game was about tight spaces, like little left and rights, jitterbug stuff. And oh man, it sucks. I'm gonna actually change it. I'm gonna change it to an A because definitely what he gave us was going to be on track for giving us a postseason, like a real chance in the postseason. And yeah, it's just a shame, man. Shame that he got injured. It really is. Looking at his shooting stats, it was 41% before he got injured. 84% from the line too, and then 46% from inside. So he took a fair volume inside. 254 shots. You take that away. Casper 500, half the amount of shots that Casper took. 395 for Jarrell. And then even though he was third, even though he got injured for most of the half the season, he was third in our shots taken from inside the 3-point line. Like wow. That moves us along to Jarrell Martin, import extraordinaire.
Two, a man of two faces. Defensively, not great, and you can see probably why he's not in the NBA anymore. Then offensively, you can see why he was in the NBA kind of thing. Just like just an offensive god, just unreal offense game around the basket, the moves, the shooting. Definitely you can see why he was picked up, and kind of that Jahlil Okafor, Sean Long, conundrum where they just can't defend, but can offensively bring so much to the table, and how you kind of hide them in a system. I mean, for that mind, he had an A offensive season, but kind of a C defensive season, so you have to kind of put him at a B. Overall, just what he brought to the table offensively outweigh what he was negative, and I think that in certain rotations you could definitely hide him a lot better. That was with Cooks on the floor, with Hunter on the floor. It was just dumb and dumber, but defensively. That's really what it is. I mean, offensively, just phenomenal to watch. Probably the best offensive player in the league on any night. So I'm going to give a B. Offensive B. A, defensive C.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to put it. I think definitely an A on offense and a C on defense, which makes a nice clean B, a B for me as well. So I'm just going to save it, and then we're going to talk about him. But one of the big things, right, is if you have an off season, like one of the big things, we're going to have to just go all in on him, right? If we're going to get him in into the off season, we're going to have to plan and scheme a defense around some of his defensive limitations. And then that's going to work a lot better than, he comes in and then hits the ground running, and then in this team where there's a lot of defensive breakdowns, there wasn't that much chemistry between multiple units, like defensively. Like Hunter never really connected that well with other players on the court. Kickett had those sorts of issues, and then Jarrell compounding that. Like it's hard to put a benchmark with jae'sean Tate that we had last year. And that guy just glued with anyone. Didn't matter who it was. He could have played with any of the worst players in the world, and he would have made them better defensively. And it's harsh to sort of look at Jarrell Martin and just go, well, why can't you be at that level defensively? But offensively, man, the moves, the smarts. One thing though, like a little bit not strong enough under the basket sometimes. Like he got bumped around a little bit too easily. So I'd like to see him, if he did want to stay down under, and play the next 5 years, kind of get a bit more beef on that frame, move away from the speed and the moves, the step backs and stuff, and kind of work more towards being like a post threat. I can see that kind of benefiting his game a little bit. But
especially if you're not moving back to the NBA, I think if you're going to stay in the FIBA league, it's more important to be, if you want to be that scoring center, you're going to have to, bang with the big boys such as Big Nate. So
and I think, again, he was another guy that kind of around the basket copped a little bit of that reffing off the floor a little bit. There was a couple of times he fouled out. He's a guy that, NBA guy, had the Euros, had the moves. He'd drop his shoulder and dudes would hit the floor and they'd be like, yep, definitely offensive foul. Then you'd see it and he's going sideways or like trying to get around that because his moves were so good almost that he was getting punished for it. And he'll learn that if he does stay next season. He'll definitely learn, like, you need to go around these guys 100% because there's a few teams in that'll just run in and fall over and most of the time they'll get the call. And it's a first season B, and you go, yep, I think we definitely have him back. But I don't know, looking at his game, whether you can go, you know what, we're just going to run our entire offense around this guy.
No.
It's not that level. Like, for a team with our caliber, I mean, if we were a team like a Cairns, blowing it up from the bottom of the league, bringing him in, changing it around, okay, that's another story. But a team that went from being first down to fourth, I think it's a different scenario. Like, he's going to have to plug into our offense rather than be the whole offense.
Yeah.
Which moves us now to Jordan Hunter, a young man with a lot of promise and definitely thrown in with a lot of responsibility this season. What were your thoughts on his season?
Definitely a breakout season. Very good. He's still a bit stone hands. I think he got a bit more offensively elite towards the end of the season. I think some of these little baby hooks and sky hooks. For a guy that shoots the free throw so well, he should have more of an outside game.
Like 73%.
He's not a Gumby at the free throw line, which means that he should have some sort of mid-range shot or 3-point shot that he's just not putting up for some reason. I think that maybe there should have been a little bit more freedom this season to see if he could stretch the floor a little bit more. I think in certain lineups with a better power forward, a defensive power forward on the floor, he's good. But just with him and Martin or him and Kickett on the floor, it's just it was bad. It was bad defensively in teams with silly fouls and then not rotating over or coming on the weak side help because Jarrell got blown by and getting the foul, and it was just a lot of silly defensive mistakes in those lineup. But then you see him on the floor with maybe a Moller at power forward or a Tommy V at power forward. It worked a little bit better. It worked somewhat better. I think the season as a whole, you have to give him a B, just because it was such a breakout season. I mean, A would be pretty hard because he doesn't win games for you. He's kind of just a solid center, not elite yet. But if he keeps having a trajectory like he did this season, maybe there is great things in the future.
So you went with a B, right?
I did, yes.
I also went with a B. I think he could very well be a C minus. I like you say breakout. I say, a little bit of shell came off the egg and the mother still had to come and peck the entire rest of the egg away. I'm not as high on him as, and it's easy for someone to sit here and just pick holes in his game. I think there was far too many just like Geordie, you're looking at over there and someone behind you goes in and just lays it in and you're left looking around like, oh, I don't even know what I was doing. I just thought I was on Mars for a second there. Sorry about that, boys. I was deep in thought. Kyrie had texted me earlier and it got me deep in thought, And to be having those, right, coming out of college, 4 years of college, a season where he played 4 minutes a game last season, that's probably enough to then be thrown straight in the deep end. I think that was this guy's not quite ready yet, really, and for a franchise like us, I don't think going from first to fourth again, we could afford to have that. I think that was one of the big issues this season is he did not gel with any of the other guys, the lineups. Like there wasn't a single lineup where you were like, Geordie Hunter and these guys are definitely going to, lock it down defensively. It was kind of a bit of a licorice all sorts scenario. Reft off the floor too. Like I think he gets points like taken back for the fact that anytime he went near anyone, they would just fall on the floor and get a foul every time. And some of those were like, okay, yeah, like him gumbying around a little bit. Some of those were just like, no, he clearly blew by that guy, and that's not a foul. Like, and he's the only guy I've seen foul out on it, like while he's dunked the ball. You know, and I'm just like, wow, like, are you kidding me? That really sets a standard of how a guy's been reffed off the floor. But at the same time, I think you're right in saying a breakout season, like being PC and being, you know, amicable about the whole situation. I think you can say definitely a commendable season. But there were so many holes in his game. There's so many holes in his game. And a jumper, man. Like, as soon as you said that, I was just like, yeah, that's such a good point. Like, an elbow jumper, anything to kind of space the floor. Anytime he was out on the floor, he would just be kind of stuck in the paint, you know, and he had trouble doubling sometimes. And you kind of knew. And, okay, he was dangerous on the roll. But then, you know, we've got a shoot first point guard and then Shawnee Bruce, who kind of never got the ball back to play make properly when he was playing a shooting guard. Like, so there was that kind of thing too. So, like, I definitely think that there's room for improvement, but I'm still looking at that. It's just Pinot 2.0, like, to me. It's like, well, what's the point of that guy? Like, rolls hard, you know, staunch on defense, but, you know, gets called for a lot of fouls. So, I don't know. I'm not looking at him going, let's build our team around this.
No.
And I've kind of wanted to say that all season, but at the same time, like, I'm like, yeah, like, a solid season, man. Like, really, really a decent season, really, in his kind of level. I'm not looking at him going like that's terrible. Like, get this guy out of the club right now. Like, there has been a couple of players over the last couple of seasons like that, and I definitely don't think he's at that level. But I would really still like to see him go back to that third spot that he was last year, where it's like third guy in 4 minutes a game. That's the level you're at. That's what you get. Because I think from there he could evolve into like a spark plug guy. Like, he comes out, hustles a bit, you know, you take him away from getting like blown up by the refs. You kind of get him rolling, like Shawnee Bruce comes out and you get him rolling a little bit, like rolling to the hoop. Because there's a couple of times sort of towards the back end of the season where we're getting these like slants where, you know, guy dribble out to the nail, come all the way back. He'd slant and cut and he'd get a wide open, like one dribble, and he could finish them off a 1 foot dunk and stuff like that where, you know, but his thought processes don't put him through those scenarios. Like, his thought processes are very just, I'm doing this, I'm standing here, okay, what's happening? Oh, the ball's there. Like, none of this, like, off ball, I can see a move happening, I can, you know, see it coming, cut, move, finish, like, you know, get into these scenarios where, oh, look, all I have to do is off a 1 foot dunk. Like, you know, those are the parts of his game next season that I want to be seeing if he does end up staying. And I think he can get there. I definitely think he can get there, which is why I'm giving him a B. Shawnee B. Bruce, Big Balls Bruce, kind of was just, you know, average balls Bruce this season.
B minus C. I don't know.
C.
It's kind of an average season. Not as good as the previous season. Okay at times.
I also
defensively pretty good. Gives away some silly fouls.
Yeah, loves it. Loves the stupid foul. The like, I'm a real hustler type foul. Yeah. And it's like, no, you just fouled him, man. You're not a real hustler. This is a stupid foul. You know, like, let's not do this. Like, some guys get away with those hustle fouls, like a Norton, a McCarron type player. But Shawnee Bruce is just running and just go whack. And he's just like, Shawnee, come on, mate. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, because I had issues with it. It's just like, you're now the shooting guard. It's like, no, like, he is not a shooting guard at all. And I think in a different system with a different point guard, yes, okay, he might be a shooting guard. But defensively struggled, loves to body guys, which is a real red flag when you're playing in this kind of team. Loves to shoot the ball when he's set, but would never get the ball back. So what was the point of him playing shooting guard? That's the part of it where I'm like, okay, not your fault, all right? Okay, I get it. It's not your fault. But his role totally changed, and I did not like that. At the start of the season, there was just like, this doesn't work. Like, real worrying where you're like, oh, and then you just were like, well, we've got no one else, so he has to start. So, oh, man.
Next man up.
Yeah, next man up type stuff. Anything else on Shawnee? I feel like that kind of encapsulates this season too, where it's like, oh, like you were a guy that we really talked about last year. It's like, you know, that's the guy I want in my foxhole. And then this season, it's just like, oh man, like, the extra responsibility, you kind of weren't ready for prime time. Like, ooh, that's a bit disappointing. And then finally, Captain Extraordinaire, Casper Ware.
I'm gonna give an F.
F. Whoa. Clickbait? Stephen A?
No, we'll go D. We'll go D.
You got a spot on jump in the morning? Get up?
Yeah. Do you get on there with Skip Bayless?
You on there with Kendrick Perkins?
It's not right. It's not right. Look, MVP because we had no one else.
Yeah.
MPP, most played player. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like, yeah, if you give this guy the ball and he has 50% of the shots and most of them don't go down, and he just
still
didn't win one
was
game.
taking bad ones, man.
Taking a lot of bad shots. He didn't win a game. There's no game that he's just like, and there's 2 minutes to go and Casper has taken this game away from the team. In fact, there was 5 games where he had the final shot and didn't hit one, and that just you can't.
I think there might have been one, maybe 2, where you kind of like Casper pulled it out, because I do remember during the season being like, yes, he's got one back. Like, everyone's going to be happy tonight. Well, hooray. And then the next week being like, and there goes all his credit from that one game he built up. What a shame. Like,
maybe it was down the stretch he scored, but it was, it was no kind of like minute left, Casper for the win. Just a disappointing season. Had a better season the previous year. I think, obviously in a better team. Shot the 3 ball better this year, which is scary because I think last year was 28.5. This year it was 30.3. Bad shots.
Super scary.
Bad shots. Looked really dangerous when he was getting the hole. Admittedly, he gets no calls.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it. And again, it's not really a failure of him, or is it a failure of him to be that player that just gets no calls, even though he gets completely just demolished getting to the rim? Why does a Scott Machado or a Bryce Cotton, why do these guys get all the calls going to the rim? So maybe he's just not that player. Maybe he's not developed that relationship with the refs. That's the guy you want on your team. You want the guy that's getting to the hoop and getting all the calls. And Casper's not that. And I think it was kind of a match made in, protest. I think he didn't want to play for Sydney this year and just realized that he's not going to get a contract anywhere else, and kind of, okay, I'm going to play for Sydney again. You know what I mean? So there was no other call-ups, and Sydney really had no one else, and COVID, and it was just kind of, it was a match made in, protest. So, yeah, D for my mind.
D for you. I went with a C. I think to take it all the way back to last year when he came in, I remember us doing that, and I went back and listened to it. We were both just like, what? Why? Why do we have to support this guy we just viciously trashed for a whole season because we hated the guy? And he comes in and you go, that's okay, yeah, cool. And then he at least developed some sort of rapport where you're like, okay, I appreciate this guy for how he plays, how hard he plays. He can make some shots. It's pretty good. Solidly one of the better guards defensively during the season, especially down low on bigger guys. And a genuinely likable dude. But that's kind of where it ends. And you're just a bit like, I don't hate the guy. I don't dislike the guy. I don't necessarily want to kick him out the door, but it's like I've gotten to a stage where I don't really want to watch this guy play anymore. I'd be happy if he didn't re-sign for the team, but at the same time, I'd have no hard feelings. I don't want to just viciously trash him, but I don't really want to watch it again next season, to be honest. I guess, look, I'll put this question to you: if it meant you guys are going to finish pretty much around the last positions if we get rid of him, I don't know. I'd be like, okay, I'll take him back if we get a shot at just making the finals again.
Just there's teams to build around. I'd like to say it's a conscious uncoupling. So that's how we end the relationship. A conscious uncoupling.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, it's just amicable. You take half the house, I take the rest, and I go, and that's all good. Why not? But yeah, rough, man. I think too many times the moments, the general rhythm wasn't too bad. I thought general rhythm, he was quite good. There was some good stretches But the moments part, man, was the biggest part that just hurt. Was like how many moments did he just have that were he's come up short again? Ugh, that's hard. Like, you know, I'm in my foxhole with you, and I don't really want to be here. Like, damn it, you know. And I kind of that felt like was permeating through our play too. Yeah. Like, I got nothing to back that up, and it's not anything tangible. But I still, like, when I was watching it, I was still a bit just like, man, like, you know, this is gonna be a miracle if we pull this out, even though we're down 1, you know, with 10 seconds to go. So, rough, man. Yeah. It's a hard way to end the season. But yeah, Casper with a D and then a C for me. And that ends the player review. So now we're going to move on to Fordicus. And for this one, I think we're going to come to a consensus on Fordey. I'm dressed like Fordey. You're not. I wanted to put both of our gradings, but I thought like we would come to a consensus because rough year for him. Came in quickly. Had to kind of make something of this team, like really kind of knit it together. And you know, if you're looking at over a number of seasons, you kind of go, okay, a new guy building something. He had a couple of seasons to kind of work it out. But for him to have these injury troubles, roster issues in his first season, it's like, damn, man, like that's, what did you like break a mirror or something? Like, wow.
I think also, you know, just 3/4 of the way through the season, just like, yeah, you won't be returning next year, 40, and you've still got to try and get us to the postseason, which is still a possibility.
Well, yeah, man. It's like,
what do you do, like, as a coach and a guy that's just been thrown into the deep end with a terrible, not roster, just a terrible, you know, circumstance of events. Look, I think he's pretty brave for what he did, going up and just completely just not trash talking, but just schooling everyone on, I think, and opening up a lot of eyes. I think certain rotations were a bit of eye-opening, but they got better towards the end of the season. The beginning of the season, his rotations were terrible. DJ being benched for like 8 minutes in the fourth quarter because he was a rookie was ridiculous, even though he'd scored 28 points. I think a lot of guys get hot and then he'd yank them. And that was a very Jae'sean thing to do. It was kind of like, your time's up, get out, instead of like just ride this guy. Too much Casper, way too much Casper, way too much going to Casper down the stretch, not getting other guys involved. But I think it evolved, and he evolved as a coach throughout the season, and he definitely got better. Probably, you know, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors with, you know, Newley and things like that, but maybe didn't get the most out of his veterans. I don't know if he had anything to do with the Weeksy signing, but maybe, you know, just kind of a match made in necessity. I think overall, would I want him back? Yes. I would be happy if he came back as coach next season. And I think that's an important thing when you grade someone is would you have them back? I'm thinking, yeah, he's definitely earned his stripes. He deserves to get a full off season and the ability to put a roster together, playing into some of, you know, Hunter and DJ, if they're going to be the kind of core guys coming back. You know, what are you going to build around? Are you going to have Jarrell return? I got to give him a B for a first season coach. What he had, you know, still coming top 6, just missing out on the finals due to some, you know, poor decisions probably earlier on in the season, with, you know, a relatively new team, finding, you know, gems in the rough and putting an okay season together. You know, I don't think you can get much better than that.
Yeah, I think it's super hard to really get a proper, like, nail down a proper grading of what that is, like what he's given us this season, because I think it's hard to come into a team, have a jumble of players, you know, and then put something together, have the adversity, go down through a season, and then, you know, admirably get up there and trash the refs to be like, are you guys kidding? Like, seriously, this is getting ridiculous now. And have that even like, oh, that actually like was a benefit, like that net benefited the team and the league. That's good. To then like be like, and you're leaving, and you're kind of going like, what a just weird roller coaster of a season for a coach to have, right? The upheaval, the chaos. Also, like, him just being like, oh, no, it is what it is. Like, whatever, it's all good. Like, it is what it is. Like, even that was bizarre at the time. I remember just sitting there thinking, like, that even is weird. Like, what do you mean it is what it is? Like, is this, were you pushed out? Is this, you don't really want to be here and this is the nicest way for you to get out? I wasn't 100% sure on that. I'm sure it'll come out eventually. But also I want to counter the good parts with, there's some execution stuff where it was a bit like, I don't know about this. There was some scheme stuff, like you said, with the lineups where it was like, no, like, what are you doing type of stuff. And also, like, it's hard to differentiate the players and the level that these guys can play at individually in the scheme that he was trying to build. I never felt like he'd nailed that down. Like, it wasn't nailed down and you were just like, oh, we don't have players that fit this scheme because the scheme doesn't have the players. Like, you're kind of like, he was building on the fly here and there, like tweaking it, doing this and that. But to not get some buy-in from a guy like Newley, like, I don't know, maybe that was on him or not. Like, I think that's an interesting point to make. And then to struggle, I think, with the 2-3 zone and the 1-2-2 type stuff and not be able to nail it down was, I don't know, I kind of was a bit like, yeah, all right, I would have to sit back and go, let's just sit out 3 seasons for you to build something. Like, I felt like we're going to have to sit here and watch him actually build something over the next couple of seasons rather than, be like, yeah, all right, let's do it. Like, sweet. Like, I still feel like going into a next season, if we had him, it'd be the same type of thing. Like, I don't know if he'd have the players to bed down a system. I still didn't really see what his system was. Like, it was kind of a little bit jae'sean, like you said. It wasn't like Weaver where you instantly knew, oh, right, a power forward who like can bring the ball up, and then there's a lot of downhill stuff, and then you play make off the downhill stuff. Okay, that's a scheme that actually works. Then you got Bogut and a guy like that. This season I was like, I don't know, I didn't see enough really. I would have been like, yeah, I'm actually all right with him leaving. I think the more pertinent issue really is like, when now I think going to have to be like, well, there might be a couple of seasons now before we can kind of get something back up and running, get something back on track, because I don't like where we're currently sitting. And that whole him just leaving halfway through the season might have been a gamble. I was like, why did that even happen? So you reckon B?
I think in the big scheme of things with the team that he had, he was still, he didn't have a breakers or a can season, which very much could have been there. I think a B is respectable.
I can't twist your arm down to a C+.
No.
No?
No.
A B-?
I could go a B-, but yeah.
I like a B. I don't know, man. I still feel like there was some sort of both sides action going on. Like, the roster stuff sucked, but at the same time, there was more heart. Play hard, and there's heart than my scheme is good, and that's why these guys are playing well, and then you add the heart in. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's all.
I kind of get you, but again, it's kind of the IQ on the floor, the lack of import talent for a lot of the season. Casper, where just throwing up bricks willy nilly. I think that's probably the one that you want to go to at the beginning of the season that changed, and I think that was the Hawks game where they just went to Bruce. And just let's go to Bruce. Let's try something different. Let's get other guys involved. Let Muller take the It
was a Melbourne game, wasn't it? The overtime game.
Pardon?
Was it the overtime game?
Yeah, the first 12 games, Muller wouldn't have taken a shot in any of overtime. Just wouldn't have been Casper dialing it up. And so I think that was an important part of the evolution of the season, was that Muller's going to take this shot, or Newley's going to take this shot, or someone else is going to take the shot. We understand that it's not working with Casper, and we've got to move on from that. And there was evolution in his game. It wasn't just Andrew Gaze, where that season was the most distressing season of basketball I've watched, and I watched the Philly rebuild, because it was just like there's talent on the floor, and there's Andrew Gaze getting in the way of that talent.
You aged like 6 basketball years just watching that season.
It was frustrating. I mean, we did have one of the worst imports I've seen in the league ever.
David Ware.
He was so bad. But I mean, again, that was the jae'sean system. It was weird. It was Andrew Bogut being angry with. It was a horrible season of basketball to watch. I would have, watched the Cairns Taipans play with a bit of heart and Cam Oliver chuck up 53s a game, then watch that gay season again. So yeah, not that bad. B for me.
A B, yeah. I'm wrangling you down to a B minus.
Yeah,
it's like kind of halfway. So I'm gonna chuck that in. B minus. It's sad, man. I think I would have liked to have been happy to sit here and go, yeah, okay, a couple of seasons, fair enough. I think the adversity fought through was good, but at the same time, I didn't really see enough to go, you know what? He's worth keeping. He's worth breaking the bank for, worth working hard for. This system is important. And I don't know, like with the roster upheaval that's going to happen, I think, I don't think anyone's going to, like any coach is going to come in and struggle, man. I feel like, I really do feel like that. Let's go now to the 3-2-1 MVP. It was a roller coaster ride of the season. I think next season I'll plan out the fan MVP because that was going gangbusters until I ran out of steam and had to go back to work and then didn't have time to do it after games. It was a bit of a struggle. But it was a roller coaster ride, man. And I think you mentioned before Moller, he actually came fourth, tied with Jordan Hunter, and then DJ ended up having 58 points, coming third. And it says a lot in his season that he had come sort of like up quite high, even though he got injured and missed most of the season or half the season. But ultimately, it came down to a battle between Casper Ware and Jarrell Martin. And does that feel like the two best guys in our team?
Yeah, I think that. I mean, admittedly, Jarrell Martin came in late, didn't play a lot of games. Casper played all the games, and it definitely felt like it was just Casper. He's got to play well sometimes. He's got to play some games well. You know what I mean? Like it was the most played player. Sometimes he's just on a bad night. He's going to put up 20 points off 6 of 28 shooting, and no one else is going to have a better night than him, kind of thing. So it definitely felt like it came down to those two. It made sense. But I think that, there was one clear winner, and, I think that I'll let you kind of.
You want me to? Yeah, feel free. Announce it. I haven't got it up on the screen. I'll throw to it when you announce it.
So definitely the guy that I think came in, had more impact on a game-by-game basis, and won it being injured a lot of the time, coming in late into the season. That's Jarrell Martin. Definitely Jarrell, the MVP.
MVP, yeah. Remember that time you predicted Bogut to be MVP and then he was MVP?
The Locks to Damas, man.
Yeah, that was hectic. But I think, definitely deserved. Could he have won the clubs one?
I don't think he played enough games.
That's fair enough.
Too much, and I think that's and that's the problem, right? It was really just the most played player. It wasn't really the MVP because I think that it was just Casper played a lot, and everyone else was injured most of the time, and that was the only it was kind of out between him or Bruce or Hunter.
Mm. So it was Martin finished 100 points, Ware 95, DJ had 58. Moller and Hunter both had 39, and then we're getting down to Diddy and Bruce. Diddy had 22, Bruce 19, Yuli 15, Kicks 10, Tommy V 9. Weeksy burgled a couple of points as well with his little run at the end. I think he could have won the MVP. I don't know if that's kind of almost political in that, Casper, you're the captain, and Casper, you're the face of the team. Like, you're the man, have an MVP. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, like if we were kind of trying to slice Casper out of the picture, you would use that to just go, no, Jarrell Martin, definitely the MVP, give him the MVP. But yeah, I'm just thinking about that now and going, ooh, that's a bit interesting that, we'll just Casper, crown him. Yeah. Like, I thought Jarrell had a much better season and a real huge impact, like offensively, in the fact that it got you off your seat too. Like you just went, whoa, like, wow, step back. Crazy shots around the rim. Every time he was shooting threes, you were just like, that's going down. He's set. That's going down. Sweet. He became our most reliable, I feel it's going down guy. After DJ went down especially. So, Yeah, good on Jarrell, man. Congratulations to him winning the on the King's Dime MVP. He doesn't get anything, no crystal decanter or anything like that for him. He just gets a shout out on a podcast from two fans of the Sydney Kings. Now, last but not least, tipping. What a roller coaster tipping comp it was this season. Just bringing it up over here. It was separated by a few points, man, going into the last few games. There was a crazy, what was it? There was a couple of 8 game weeks and 9 game weeks in the middle of the season that was just like guys and girls had chances to come all the way back. And it was just like, I'm out of it. Oh, man, I'm out. This sucks. And then it was like, whoa, 7-point round. I'm back. Like, this is great. But ultimately, it came down to just a couple of points. And it was Jenny Fox winning the tipping comp.
Jenny.
Yeah, in the Fox household, she reigns supreme. So she had 101 points on the season. You finished with a perfect round the last week. Burgled yourself off the bottom away from the wooden spoon. But yeah, Brendan and myself finished on 99. Paul Fox, last year's reigning champ, only 3 points behind. So, man, it was super tight. I was surprised how tight it was because it was a roller coaster ride. There was just some game weeks where you couldn't tip guys. Like you would just go, I don't know, man. Like I really want the Kings to win, or we really need the Hawks to win. And then there were some weeks where you were just like, how the hell did these favorites lose? Like, what the hell is going on here? So I reckon this bubble really kind of messed a lot of teams around this season.
Yeah.
And it kind of messed the tipping around. So
indeed.
Congratulations to Jenny. She wins the annual Kevin Lish stud shirt. And what did she get? A Jarrell Martin card.
Yeah,
Have you got that there? No?
Yeah, I don't have it with me. I can go get it if you want.
It's in the vault.
It's in the vault. It's in the card vault, ready to be shipped and sent.
Yeah, we'll get that out to you, Jenny. Hope you're watching at home. Congratulations. And that is about it. An action-packed, long show. Do we need to talk just quickly, briefly, next season-y stuff?
I think it's so early that we could come up with a lot of hocus pocus crystal bullshit, but
there's content, man, to be had, I think, over the next couple of weeks.
There's content, but it'd be good to see when some things would be, announced and released. And I think there really is some kind of like, what do we do from here content?
Because we could almost rebuild an entire roster, really.
You could rebuild an entire roster. But the problem is, 1, COVID, 2, import spots next year. Is this going to go back to normal because fans are in stadiums and, technically we should all be vaccinated by the end of the year and it's all going to go back to normal? Theoretically. So should we go back to 3 import spots? What's the next start program going to look like now that the G League is paying for high school basketball? So it's not the pathway to draft. It's more like the draft and stash. So we're going to get guys from 30 to 60 come down under as opposed to kind of guys going to the draft. How is that going to work? Obviously with the G League going back to normal. So the NBA season is going to go back to the October, June, starting this year. And so the G League will obviously follow that. So there's a few things that I think that are unknowns in terms of the economics of basketball, what it's going to be like here. What does this new team add to this? Is this new team going to come and poach a whole bunch of great talent? Is the talent going to be diluted now because of this 9th team? Are we going to be playing development players in a normal roster? Because, I mean, I don't know if anyone missed out on a spot this year. Locally, like, is there that much good local talent that could potentially play NBL basketball? I'm not sure. So that's going to be an interesting one to see over the next 2 months. Who the Lumberjacks, or what are they called? The Jackjaws?
Jack Jumpers. That's such a bad name, man. What are you doing? And it won a naming competition too. It should have called it Basketball McBasketball-y Face.
Yeah, Bodie McBoatface. Bally McBallface, yeah. Terrible.
Yeah, and you raise an excellent point because I've been thinking just, fantasy style. You could easily, with what we have to rebuild, just find all the best shooters, find all the best defensive players, bring in a couple of centers, and, we're good to go, like fantasy styles. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll definitely sit down and do, I think, some content regarding like what can happen with the roster. But you just raised a really good point with that team coming in. We're now in a market of fighting for these players. You know, like Landale's coming off contract, and I was like, "Oh, if you could pick up Landale, like, you know, bang! Like if we could sneak him in, you know, they don't win the title this season. He's upset."
I think a lot of these players go and search Europe now. I think that the COVID, you know, they'll be vaccinated. The COVID fiasco is semi over. You know, basketball's returning to normal. Stadiums are returning to some capacity all around the world. I mean, NBA is not going to be that vice, but do they go back to Europe and look for the more money? The more money is the local league going to be that competitive when it comes back? You know, Landale only came here because the European league stopped. So is Landale going to go? Are we going to lose DJ to Europe? You know, those are the kind of questions: is how diluted is the local league going to become? You know, is there going to be any big name NBA, ex-NBA players come down under that we don't know about, obviously, you know, with the constant turnover of talent in that league. So there's a lot to kind of worry about in the off season. I think the diluting of local talent is one. I mean, you can kind of look at all the teams and you kind of think, yeah, well, there's enough local talent in these 8 teams to form a league, but you add a 9th team in there, you know, who's coming through? What have we got coming through? You know, with 2 imports, that's a very hard roster space to fill.
I think it's going to go back to 3 though, right?
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I don't know.
I don't think it's set in stone yet, but I think it's going to go back to 3 imports. And I also look at that 3 imports and go, that makes it even more hard, man. Like, you could easily just blow a lot of dough on a couple of imports and they're terrible, and you're just like, damn it. Like, that's just another season where you blew it again. Kind of like, you know, Melbourne, who's their import? Hobson, I think he's counted as an import.
Hobson.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But like you can't even look at these other teams and just go, oh man, like, you know, there's imports to snake from other teams. Like, let's snake a couple of imports from, like, I don't know if the import level really has been that good. Mooney's coming off contract and he said he wants to go back to Perth, and he's someone where you just like snap that guy's hand off, pay him the most on your team, and pay the guy and be like, come and play for your team. Like, whether it's us or the Jack Jumpers now that they're in the mix. I think there's some real chances to burgle some talent here and put together another really good roster. But at the same time, there's also the margins are very fine for us to just go, and we blew it again on like 16 players that we could have got last season that we didn't. Or in the off season rather, that we didn't. Like, how many of those players, Landale, Magnay, although I think we dodged a bullet on Magnay watching him, like I don't know where the hell his talent has gone, but he's struggling for Perth.
Rolling effect.
Yeah, the rolling effect. You know, like Landale, Magnay, Mathiang was flirting with coming down here. Who else did we whiff on? Jack White. So many people we could have signed. Humphreys came back. Like, I'm still looking at it going like, oh, like we've whiffed on so many dudes, man, that are like leading guys in the league. I don't know. It's like, oof.
Do we see a Thon Maker as a marquee down under?
Oh yeah, definitely. Snap his hand off. Bang, done.
Snap his hand off. Get him here playing. You know, he's a talent. You know, he's definitely a head above local league. But anyway, it's going to be a fun speculative off season.
And we'll definitely do heaps of content over the next few weeks.
Well, again, it's only going to be a 4 months off season. I think we start up again late October, so it's a shorter off season this year as well, going obviously to the extended off season they had last year. So there's definitely going to be a shorter turnaround of basketball, which means you'll see us a bit more regularly in between.
Yes, and I think that about wraps it up for tonight. So thank you to everyone who came along and watched and commented. Paul Fox, he, was talking about that third rookie. It was Giddy. Thanks for shouting that out. Yeah. But for a guy who was just like, I'm out, I'm going to the NBA, I was just like, you don't deserve rookie of the year. Go away. Go and play in the NBA. Although he did have a pretty sweet season, and it looks like he might be drafted in the lottery. That's pretty sweet as well. But yeah, as always, we have been live tonight on Facebook. We'll put these up. We'll put this one up on YouTube. I don't think we need to put the audio up. That might be a bit of a stretch. People listening to that 2-hour podcast. There was a lot of visual stuff and interactive stuff. So But you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, and Spotify, and also, YouTube. So the next couple of weeks, we'll probably be putting content up on YouTube. I'm thinking we might put these up on Facebook as well. That way we can share them around, get a bit more interaction, try to build a little bit more suspense for the rest of the season. And thanks everyone for watching us this season. It's been a great ride. We really appreciate all the eyes and ears and all the comments and stuff like that. We're definitely going to be doing it next season. We're going to keep going. The content show is going to roll on. And anything else you wanted to say before this kind of season ends?
No, thank you for another season. We'll see you guys.
Do it. See the line.
Next time.
On the King's Dime.
Peace out, peeps.